Welcome to TUC0's Talks. TUC0's Talks is a leadership podcast where we talk to military leaders and to athletic coaches to try to figure out how do we take care of people and how do we learn and fail forward. Today, I have the opportunity to interview Coach Lacy Gilbert, the athletic director at the Wesleyan School. Max Preps recently ranked the Wesleyan School as the #1 athletic program in Georgia and #6 in the country. Wesleyan is the only secondary school in Georgia to win at least one state championship in every sport they participate in. Some of you may also know Wesleyan by a recent video by comedian John Chris.
Top 10 sports hate. Now this is sports hate.
Yep.
Not real hate. Number 9, the Wesleyan School. Now that's the high school. That's related. That's my high school rivalry.
Okay, John, I'm going to let you off the hook, but just because we're Sanford alums. Well, today, Coach Gilbert discusses the qualities she looks for in coaches and the importance of building relationships with student athletes. Overall, the conversation will emphasize the importance of building strong relationships, being intentional in leadership, and creating a positive team culture. Well, make sure that you like and subscribe and get ready to check in with TUC0's Talks. Hello and welcome to TUC0's Talks. We have another interview today. I am super excited. Someone that I've gotten to know over the last year, and just to, one, to get to know the person better, but two, just to hear the story behind it. So we have Coach Gilbert here, and we're excited to talk to her. You want to say hi, Coach?
Hello, I'm excited to be here.
Well, it's going to be a great time. So what I want to do before we start this whole thing is, why don't we just take a second and let you introduce yourself?
Okay. I'm Lacy Gilbert, and I am the athletic director at Wesleyan School in Peachtree Corners, Georgia. I am born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. So you don't meet many of us. We have a lot of transplants here, but I grew up here and went to a neighboring private school up the street. But grew up here in Atlanta, and have been at Wesleyan. I just finished 27 years.
Oh, man, that's awesome. 27 years in one spot.
I know.
Oh, well, that's good. Well, I do appreciate you taking the time. I know being athletic director of a school, there's a lot going on. And if people are not educators, they think that you're off for the summer and that you have nothing to do. All the educators are like, no, it's much busier than any other time. So
For sure.
Well, as an athletic director, you are responsible really for the education and the building of the programs, but ultimately you're responsible for leading coaches. And so for leading them and hiring them, what is it that you are looking for if a guy's or a gal is coming to be a coach at Wesleyan? What does that person look like in your mind?
Yeah, first and foremost, we are a faith-based school. And so the first question is are you a Christian? And kind of tell me about your faith, because that's kind of the end for us if that piece isn't there. So that's the most important for us. So I always say, if you love Jesus and your relationship with God is important to you, and then you want to pour into kids, so you love kids, because obviously if you're interviewing for a job or applying for a job, you probably know your X's and O's. You're probably passionate about the sport. But my big thing is the relationship piece with the kids. And you probably hear that a lot, but I think it's been, bigger in the last few years where our athletes want someone who really wants to get to know them, who they are as a person, not based on how they perform on the field. And so I want people that are relationship people that really want to get to know our kids, again, outside of their performance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think that translates to the civilian world or even the military world, is really the X's and O's. That's just something we expect. But the real big deal of what's going to separate you is, do you actually care for people? And are you willing to invest in them and to love on them? And I think that's a big point. How do you assess that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because some of it is just observation, but a lot of it is a kid sitting in my office telling me, a difference in how they view one coach maybe versus another coach if they're a kid that plays two different sports. And, they can verbalize and really vocalize how a coach makes them feel. And so for one coach, they will do anything for them. They'll run through a brick wall. The coach can get onto them, can expect a lot from them because that coach has had lunch with them, has come watch them play their other sport that they play. They've spent time with them in the off season, in the summer. And so I see those things. Like I see our coaches right now that are having a cookout with their players preseason, or, those things that they're doing, and that pays dividends later on if you put that time in to invest in that. And then I see where it doesn't happen. So whether it's a parent talking to me about things, or whether it's a player saying, hey, we really love these team building things we did, we don't do those anymore. And so kids will vocalize that now. But a lot of my job is observation, is getting out to practices, seeing how they interact, going to games, watching. I'm on the sidelines of a lot of, on the sidelines every Friday night, but a lot of sports I'm there. And so I observe it. And so it's kind of a combination of things, but usually for the coaches that are pouring into those kids and have a strong relationship, you don't hear the negative, you don't hear from the parents, or you don't hear the kids, but I know about it if it's not happening. So
for sure, parents will absolutely be the first one to call if something negative's going on. And that's not just parents, that's everyone. Right.
Yeah. True.
All right. So, you make a very interesting point, is your job is observation. I have seen it a million times where people will be coaches and athletic directors. And it's really hard to observe what's happening in it. If you're a football coach, observe anything else that's happening in the fall. And even when spring training is going on, what's happening in the spring. And so there's this, hey, I really need to not be coaching in order to be a great administrator, which changes the dynamic. So with that in mind, did you always want to be an athletic director, or did you want to be like, no, I just want to coach?
I mean, that's a good question. The short answer is no, I did not know that I always wanted to be an athletic director. So I grew up, my brother's 2 years older than me. So I grew up from a very early age playing kickball in the cul-de-sac, football in the yard. I mean, my dad was my first soccer coach at age 5. So I grew up loving sports, playing sports. I loved to compete. I didn't even care if it was a board game. I liked everything about competition. And so that was kind of ingrained in me. I played sports all through growing up, had a wonderful high school experience and college experience, but I knew I wanted to teach PE and be around kids and be in education. I have an education degree, but I knew I wanted to coach. I did not know I wanted to be an AD at the time. And I don't know if part of that is that, to be quite honest, every person I knew in that position was a male. In every environment growing up, and every AD I knew, even when I started coaching, I didn't know any female ADs at that time. I think it took a little bit of time. Once I got my master's while I was still working, I got to a point where I was like, I don't want to teach PE forever. I love coaching. I want to keep doing that, but I want to be in some kind of administration or leadership role. So I did explore, do I want to be a grade chair? I helped start our missions program. Do I want to work with missions and retreats? And then an assistant AD position opened up, and I was like, oh, okay. So once I got into being assistant AD for 9 years, that's where I was like, oh, this is my wheelhouse. This is what I really love. So I think it was a progression. I think it was, sports were always the thing, but actually being in this role, because you get into education because you love kids and want to be around kids, and you love coaching. And then when you get into the AD and administrative role, you have to be intentional about being around kids because you're around adults a lot more.
Yeah. Okay, so as an assistant AD, were you able to do both?
Coach, yes.
Okay.
I was the girls' head soccer coach for 16 years. And so, and I coached volleyball and basketball and cross country and other things. So yes. And I will say there are a lot of ADs that still coach. For me, it was a decision to not coach. I just felt like my main sport was soccer. Spring is the busiest season because that's the most sports, the most teams. And I felt like, to be day in and day out and be a really good coach, there was no way I could do both and be excellent. For me to be excellent at both. And I really wanted to pour in as a new AD to really pour into those coaches and be around those teams and observe, like we said. And I think it would be hard to do that if I was at soccer practice every day. But I miss it. I miss coaching.
I can't imagine. just you're watching everybody else doing those things, and it's the passion that you love to do, and just
Mm-hmm.
being on the outside looking in, it's tough. And
I always say I would like to go back and be like the third assistant for soccer. I don't want to. I don't want to be in charge again. I've got enough on my plate, but just to get out there with the kids and be around them. I try to take my dog out there and get out there when I can and observe, because I do. Again, you have to be intentional, whether it's being at a game and going and talking to students or working with our student leadership group. I mean, just you try to be intentional, because again, I want to be around kids. Like, that's why we do this, you know?
I'm gonna stray away from what we talked about. So I always do
Okay.
this, and I'll apologize now for putting you on the spot. But you've used this word a couple times, and I think it's very critical in leadership today. And the word is intentional. Can you expand on what does that look like to be intentional with, and we'll overarching and say it's about students, but anyone that you're leading? What does that mean?
I mean, for me, it's observing and then seeing where the needs are and where I need to step in. And, you know, for coaches, for instance, new coaches that we have, like literally reaching out, going to their office, making sure I'm present for things, so that it's not I'm sitting in my office and never really touch base with them. I'm a super relational person, so that is normal for me. But I think, like, when I think about coaches, like, I'll give an example. One of our coaches, I'm encouraging him to be more intentional and to build relationships with his kids. And then so I'm like, one thing you could do is, a lot of your kids play another sport. Like, several of your kids on your team are involved in another sport. So that sport happens to be in the fall. And so I was like, get a minibus, take the rest of your team, go eat dinner, and then go watch those kids on the football field that are playing. So be intentional about finding ways to show those kids, or go show up to the kids on your team that run track. Like, go cheer them on, go out there for 30 minutes. I guarantee you they'll notice that you're there. So being intentional about showing up, because those are the things that kids notice. They notice if the varsity football coach goes and watches the middle school football game. Like, they notice if our lacrosse coach shows up on a Saturday to watch the middle school lacrosse kids play. Like, being intentional. And I think that's whether you're a coach or whether you're an AD, for me to take a moment to walk away from my desk and go to the cafeteria or walk through the halls and say hey to my coaches that are there, or just go supporting them in something. If one of them speaks in chapel, go to chapel and listen to them speak and send them a note afterwards. So things like that, of making time to be present, making time to write a thank you if you see them do something well. I mean, I think those things go a long way, rather than just sitting kind of back in your office and sort of taking on an administrative role. To me, that's really important.
Yeah. And, the principle of leading by walking around, that a lot of the MBA programs talk about. And,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's really easy to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to do. How do you schedule time to think through what would be productive? Or do you just are like, I see a need, I'm going to go do it?
I think it's a little of both. I mean, some of it is because it's very easy in any administrator's role to become, even if you're a people person, to become task oriented at times,
Mhm.
to kind of put your head in, and there's just, because there's always stuff to do. The plate is always full, it feels like. And so I think some of it for me is thinking through, like, planning ahead. Like, I'm going to write one note card to someone once every morning, and just kind of keeping that's on my list of things I'm going to do. Or, hey, at mid morning, I'm going to take 10 minutes and just take a walkie, whether it's around my gym or in another gym. Like, it's thinking ahead for some of those things. And then other times there's a lot of drop-ins in my office. I have a pretty open door. And so there's a lot of like, hey, do you have 5 minutes? And it's never 5 minutes. It's always more. And so sometimes I have to really, in the moment, think, okay, Lacy, like, set aside what you're working on, give your attention. And then there's other times I have to say, I can't right now, but it's being willing to be interrupted. I think it's okay to not always have a plan, but be willing to be interrupted, because sometimes the best moments, whether it's a teachable moment or a moment to encourage or whatever it may be, come with the interruptions.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating, because a lot of what we're talking about is, being intentional is intentionally thinking through what other people need.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right, task oriented. Hey, I've got to get X done today. I'm successful because I did this, 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 and this. And that's not what we're measuring. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we're measuring success on what other people did well. And the people that I'm in charge of, were they taken care of?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's a different dynamic, and one that's, I don't know anywhere that that's taught.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And I think people, we talk about it with students a lot that they want to feel appreciated and they want to feel known and loved. I think adults are the same. And I think
yeah.
adults want to feel like, I mean, I had dinner with a couple of friends the other night and they work at the school, but in a different, not in athletics. And it goes a long way when their principal says something encouraging to them or notices something that they've done or whatever it may be. And so even in that conversation, my wheels were turning of like, okay, what do I need? What do me and my staff need to do to help our coaches? Because it's easy to appreciate and to see and acknowledge the head coaches, but are we acknowledging the middle school assistant coach that's out there day in and day out doing their job and working hard? Like, and so part of it is just being able to see and have open eyes to where, because adults need it just as much. We all need the encouragement. We all need, I think it's a big deal to honor people and to recognize people. And so just try and find ways to do that is really important.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Wesleyan does that so well. And, being military, we move every 2-3 years. I've had
Mhm.
the privilege of being in a lot of schools over the time. And one of the things that I just love, and people ask me all the time, so how do you like Wesleyan? How do you like Wesleyan? I go, I love it. I love it. I love the Christian aspect where
Mhm.
people are pouring, and I will say people because it is multiple people that just pour into the kids, and you can tell that they love kids. And I sent a text message to one of their coaches the other day, and I said, man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you pouring into them on and off the field.
Mhm.
And that was just what you do, and that's a culture that I'm sure was years before that you're continuing to put through. But one of the things Wesleyan does so well is win. And you've had so many state championships and things like that. But I laugh a little because we're not talking about X's and O's here. And
Mhm.
how much does winning have to do with X's and O's versus being together as a team and developing as a team and loving each other and supporting each other? I'll pass that off to you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think every single sport's won a state championship now.
They
Is that
have
right?
girls and boys lacrosse were the last two, and they won this past spring. So
Well,
yes, for
that's,
every sport that we field a team, yes, we have now won a state championship.
how does that happen? Like, how does that work?
I'm gonna give a lot of credit to our coaches and our administration because we hope we hire the right people. And so, like you talked about state championships versus X and O's versus relationships, all that. I think the winning a lot of times is a byproduct of those other things because to me, if you win a state championship but the culture of the team is not good, that's a real problem to me. I don't want the state championship if the team culture is bad and we've not created a culture that is furthering the Christian mission of our school. And so, but I think if you have the coaches that do that and that are passionate about their sport and passionate about their faith and passionate about their kids, a lot of that is the byproduct of that. You get the winning. And so I think those things can go hand in hand. I think you can have great team culture and you can have winning teams as far as championships and those kind of things. But I think it does start with who you hire and who you put at the head of those programs. Are they first and foremost in line with the mission of the school? I'll be honest, I played sports because I loved the competition and I loved my teammates. I loved all of that. And I had some good coaches, but gosh, if I had had coaches like some of the ones that we have here, like I would have, I mean, they're incredible. And so the ways that they, like you said, I mean, it's on and off the field. It's going to watch them play in a summer league. I mean, it's all these, they go the extra mile all the time. I don't think I really had that, to be honest. I think I just love playing. So I am grateful for our coaches. And the school, the support they pour our coaches have what they need. Like they have the supplies they need. Our school values athletics, and as they value a lot of things, but athletics is something that we do value.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of athletics, and I've said this a million times. I'll continue saying it. It is the leadership laboratory. The reason school has athletics is we teach them all the things, hopefully as a school, we teach them all the things they need on character and virtues, and then we give them an opportunity to do it under contention. Can I still maintain those characteristics and values and do it at a high level? And so athletics to me is huge. I think biblically, I align myself a lot with the same nature as Paul, who was massive into athletics and military. And so I think there's just so many characteristics that athletics can teach in your quiet time, in your walk with the Lord, and with you as a person. So could not agree with you more. So in that vein, let me do a little bit of a right turn here. You've been around some incredible coaches. I'm sure you've had incredible coaches. When you think of those people, is there one or two stand out? And then if so, who are they? And you can name them if you wish, but more the characteristics of what they brought and taught that would get you that name as a really good coach.
Yeah. So just thinking about, I'll speak about some of the coaches here that we have. And so, I mean, one, I don't mind naming them, but one is she's just had a baby, so she's not going to be our coach now, but our longtime softball coach. She's an alum of the school. She is incredible. Nobody's perfect, but she just does things really well. She's excellent in how she runs her program. She communicates well. She's had a theme from Corinthians, one body, many parts for years. And so she incorporates that into her theme. So faith is a big part. She utilizes her assistants really well. She delegates well. So there's a lot of things that she gets really well. She's super competitive. She's won the last 3 state championships. So all of those kind of things come together. I think about our cross country, track, and girls soccer coaches. They have created an incredible culture within their teams of faith, and especially for a team like track and cross country, really big teams, it's hard to make the kids necessarily feel valued that are, when you're 100 kids on a team, and if you're kind of the bottom 10%, you're not winning much. You're just out there sometimes to socialize, and you're just running every day. But they've created these cultures where kids want to be a part of their programs. One, because it's fun. I think fun is something kids play because it's fun. And so I think I'm impressed with that. I think about our head football coach. He has his theme is building men for others. He's done that for years. They usually study a book together. His staff does devotions for every team. And he is passionate and fiery. When you watch him coach, he loves the game, and he's passionate, and he wants to win, of course, but he cares about his kids. And, I'll give an example of him. Several of the football players also play baseball, and senior night for baseball this year, it was a long game. Senior night was afterwards, and it ended up pouring down rain. So we had to move everything into the gym last minute. And he stayed till the very end to watch his kids for senior night. And these are seniors. They're not playing football for him again. But to me, that is an intentionality thing. That is he put it on his schedule, and he was going to come there to support those kids. That's a big deal. I think about both of our lacrosse coaches. They have poured into the younger kids in our program and built that program up. And I think that's part of why we won the state championships this year, is they've spent time developing younger kids and showing younger kids they care. And, our boys program, one of our assistant coaches kind of took the reins with their theme for the year. And, and so I like that he's empowering his other coaches too. And so I don't know. I mean, I can name coach after coach that are doing some really good things. And I think one of the things we talked earlier, we were talking about, hiring coaches. And I think when coaches want to come in, if you're an assistant and you aspire to be a head coach, there's a lot to remember, that it's not just the practice plan and the game plan and what happens on the field and the court. There's so much more to coaching. And so that's why I see all these coaches, they all have their strengths and weaknesses, but they're doing some really great things that are pieces of coaching that aren't just going to a clinic and learning how to be, run a press break better. They're actually learning the other pieces that incorporate being a head coach.
I couldn't agree more. You know, and I'm thinking through all the coaches that you're talking about. And yep,
You know a lot of
yep,
them, yeah.
yep, yeah. And so, you will not walk onto campus and be like, oh, these coaches are just out here to win. Like
Right.
that, you're never going to say that. And there's one sport, and I won't say the sport because I'll give it away, but a head coach has always been the first person I've seen out there standing up there and greeting every single kid. Like every single one that comes up, he is greeting that kid. And that's intentional. You don't just do that. And he's doing that to say you're important. Like you can just tell, like he's trying to convey that to them. It's not about him. It is about the kids. And so I love that. I love the culture that you're building. I think you're exactly right that winning is a byproduct and people are buying in and will run through walls for these coaches because they know that they're out there for the kids and not for anything else. And so,
we still want
that's awesome.
we still want to win, you know, like you don't put all this time in and then you get on the field and you're like, I don't care, you know, of course you care. So it's just going about it the right way. So, but you do want coaches that want to be competitive. Like it's a big deal. And like you said before, all those things, teamwork, how to handle adversity, how to win with humility, lose with grace, like how to lead, how to serve others. I mean, all of those things come from being on a part of a team. And I think, like you said before, athletics is a huge part of that. And so we want all those things, you know, we want our kids to grow from all those things, you know, and sometimes it might be 5 years out when an alum comes back and talks about how impactful it was, you know, and sometimes it's a slow burn of learning and you got to like be patient. But, you know, we do want to be competitive and, you know, so I think you can hold both of those things. I think you can have a really great culture and create something really special, but also want to win when you step on the field or the court or in the pool or whatever.
Yeah. And I hate this, the phrase, and maybe hate's strong, but it's pretty close, it's not about winning and losing. And I'm like, well, what are we doing this for?
Right.
Like, why would we not want to develop people so that we teach them when we invest in them, they can win? Because I want them to win at life. I want them to win in their quiet time. I want them to win in being a father, being a mother, you know, whatever it is. Winning is not bad, and it is the focus,
Right.
and it is the perfection that we're chasing, not that we're going to achieve perfection at anything, but it's still something we're trying to go after.
Right.
And so, yeah, I love that. That's a great point. Well, wow. It's been 30 minutes already.
I know.
So we just started. Well, what I do want to do is take just a second here and pass it over to you and say, hey, is there anything that you would like to communicate to the listeners here and to the young leaders?
Yeah, I would just say for those younger leaders that want to kind of step up in the ranks and want to, you know, we have some here at Wesleyan that aspire to be a head coach one day, whether it's here or somewhere else. A little bit of advice I'd give is one, just be a learner, have the perspective of you're probably surrounded by a lot of veteran coaches and people that have doing this for a while. And I would say get to know yourself and figure out what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. We all have areas that we're pretty good at, and we all have areas where we aren't. We need to grow. And so figuring those things out, I had a coach sit in my office, and he's a pretty high level assistant in a sport. And he was in my office this year and said, hey, I want to be a head coach one day. And he's like, tell me, could you see me being a head coach? And so we were able to talk through. I said, here's some things I think you're great at. You're doing, and I've worked with him as a colleague before I was in this role too. And then I said, but here's a couple things that I'd love to see you grow in as you aspire to be a head coach. And they're things that you're going to need as a head coach. And so it was a great conversation. I would say if you aspire to be that, like, ask questions, ask the head coach you work with, like, give me some feedback. or go meet with a coach of a different sport that you would really respect and admire. And hey, go sit down with them. Hey, I think you do a great job of building team unity. Give me some idea. Tell me what you do, And so I think there's a lot of ways to learn and grow to kind of set yourself up for that position. But also understanding that I think a lot of young coaches think that coaching is just the day in and day out on the field stuff. And I think there's so much more. You got to learn how to manage a staff and how to manage a budget, how to do scheduling, how to talk to an upset parent. I mean, there's a lot of things that come with it that aren't just this one piece. So kind of grow in those areas that may not be your strengths. But I also say it's the best thing in the world. I think coaching is so fun. It's such a different environment. I think the ways kids grow in their classes and they get to know their teachers, and that's amazing. But I think it's the going on mission trips, being on sports teams, being in a Bible study, all those things that happen outside of the classroom are where the relationships really, really grow. And it's so fun. And it's such a rewarding career. So I would say stick with it.
Awesome. No, that's so good. And being coachable and being a learner all through your career. But people think that, oh, I just graduated high school, college, and now I'm done learning.
Right.
No, you just learned how to learn.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's lifelong.
Yeah.
Well, that is great. Well, Coach, I cannot thank you enough. This has been awesome. I love the being intentional, and I'm definitely going to sit down and go through my day and through my goals and just be like, all right, how could I be more intentional and what could I learn? So I appreciate you and appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great talking to you, and we love having you part of this community too. So it's been amazing.
Thank you. All right. Well, from Coach and I, thanks for being a part of this. Hope you pick some things out that you can take on and learn from. Until next time, this is TUC0's. Check it off.